We are live now, and Shobhana ji, we are just beginning with the initial announcements. Namaskar, Annyeong Hasanika. I'm truly delighted to welcome you all from Seoul, Republic of Korea, at this narration of Kasturba Katha today by internationally acclaimed speaker Dr. Shobhana Radhakrishna. Today's event is a part of our continuing 2 years-long celebrations commemorating the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma and his legacy worldwide. Today's Kasturba Katha also coincides with our 6th annual Cultural Festival of India, Sarang 2020, which we started from 16th of October last week. In the past 2 years, that is from 2018 till 2020, commemorating 150 years of birth of Father of our nation, we at Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center and Embassy of India in Seoul have organized a series of events. To begin with, a nationwide Gandhi lecture series was co-organized on a monthly basis with Institute of Indian Studies at Hankook University of Foreign Studies. Started in March 2019 until December 2019, 10 lectures were conducted in different cities of Korea, including Seoul, Busan, Cheongju, Chuncheon, and Jeju Island. It aimed to spread Gandhi's thoughts and his philosophy, which still have values today. Each lecture attracted participants from local community, academics, and civil society organizations, along with the support of the local hosts. A joint international symposium on Gandhi's 150-year legacies was organized on October 1st, 2019 by the Embassy of India in association with Yonsei University and George Mason University, focusing on the abiding relevance of his values and principles to the world today. Recently, on 7th October 2020, we had organized another international symposium on the emerging world order and the Gandhian way in collaboration with the Department of Indian Studies at Hankook University of Foreign Studies on this digital platform. A special lecture was also organized at Yonsei University Leadership Center in March 2019, where Shobhana ji herself gave a lecture on Mahatma Gandhi's changing leadership and its connection to contemporary society during her visit to Seoul. Recently, again, in July 2020, she narrated the Gandhi Katha online on the theme Crisis due to COVID-19 pandemic and the need to live in harmony with nature, the Gandhian way. Taking it further from youth to children, a painting competition for elementary school students was held in June 2019. Along with children, the enthusiastic parents enjoyed the screening of Hindi film Lage Raho Munna Bhai with Korean subtitles. Again, in the month of September 2020 this year, we had co-organized an illustrated poetry and essay competition with Gandhi Ashram of Institute of Indian Studies at Hankook University of Foreign Studies. Mahatma Gandhi practiced sustainable way of life at both individual and community level, and environment consciousness was his prime concern. Keeping this in view, Korea-India Peace Park was also unveiled in June 2019, and 150 trees were planted at the historic Independence Park in Seoul. A pine tree, a symbol of longevity, and 149 munghwa plants, the national flower of Korea, were planted in this park. This park highlights our shared values of conserving nature and environment by leading a life in harmony with nature. Last year, again in October 2019, as a part of 150th birth anniversary celebration of Mahatma Gandhi, unveiling ceremony of Gandhi statue took place at Yonji Park in Gimhae. The statue has been gifted by Indian Council of Cultural Relations. A section of this park is being developed as the Gandhi Park to be completed by the end of this year. Earlier in 2014, a bust of Mahatma Gandhi was also presented by ICCR, which was unveiled at Hongboksa Temple in Busan. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, during his state visit to Republic of Korea in February 2019, unveiled a bust of Mahatma Gandhi at the prestigious Yonsei University of Seoul. Today's event is a part of our continuing celebrations commemorating the 150th birth anniversary of this great soul and his legacy worldwide. Before I invite Shobhana ji, let me also introduce her to our participants who have joined us for the first time. Dr. Shobhana Radhakrishna is a globally renowned Gandhian, recognized for her invaluable contribution to literature, social service, and spreading the vision of Mahatma Gandhi. She is on a mission to reintroduce Mahatma Gandhi to the people of India and abroad, imbibing Gandhi's values as she grew up in his ashram situated at Sevagram in Vardha. Shobhanaji's focal point is the Gandhian way of life and serving humanity. Currently, she is the chief functionary of SCOPE, Gandhian Forum for Ethical Corporate Governance, formed under the aegis of Standing Conference of Public Enterprises for Promoting Ethical Business Practices and organizational integrity in public sector enterprises, and have given over 300 talks in major public sector enterprises in India. She has regularly addressed young probationary officers of Indian civil services in the Apex training academies of Government of India. With over 4 decades of experience in social work, in development projects in different parts of India, her background of Gandhian constructive work for the development and welfare of the underprivileged communities has led her to dedicate her life to the cause of serving the poor. He has traveled internationally to give lectures on the occasion of United Nations International Day of Non-Violence. As a part of the 150th birth anniversary celebration of Mahatma Gandhi, she has delivered lectures and Gandhi Katha offline as well as online in over more than 50 countries with support from respective Indian missions and also Ministry of Culture, Government of India. It is a personal pleasure and delight to welcome Dr. Shobhana Radhakrishna today on this virtual platform. We look forward to your narration of Kasturba Katha, story of the life and times of Kasturba Gandhi, who was not only a wife, a mother, a companion, but a satyagrahi too. Often Kasturba Gandhi's role in the freedom struggle and her influence over Gandhi's life has been relegated to the shadows, but how she was instrumental in making Mohandas into Mahatma is what we are going to hear today from Shobhanaji. Over to you, Shobhanaji.
Thank you, Dr. Sonu Trivedi ji, for this very, very warm welcome. And namaskar and welcome to the Kasturba Katha, narrated by me during Sarang, the 6th Festival of India in the Republic of Korea. I want to express my deep gratitude to the Ambassador of India, Srimati Shripriya Rangarajanji, and Dr. Sonu Trivedi ji, Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Seoul, for organizing the online Kasturba Katha today as part of the 150th birth anniversary commemoration of Mahatma Gandhi, which is also the 150th anniversary of Kasturba Gandhi, his wife. It becomes very significant during this time, as in India, we are all celebrating Mother Goddess or Matru Shakti during the Navaratris. And today I'm so delighted to talk about the Matru Shakti, Jagadamba Kasturba Gandhi, and share about some of the achievements and transformation and sacrifice and suffering that she went through. Kasturba Gandhi played an important role in making Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi into the Mahatma. She was as strong and as great as her husband, Mahatma Gandhi. In today's Kasturba Katha, I will talk about the suffering and sacrifices made by Kasturba Gandhi, her courage of conviction, how she inspired thousands of women to fight against injustice and discrimination in South Africa and in the non-violent freedom struggle in India, and her selfless service of the patients during all the health emergencies in South Africa and India. Kasturba Katha is based on the ancient Indian oral tradition of Katha or storytelling with hymns and narration. Therefore, I will begin with the Sanskrit shloka from the Indian scripture, and that scripture is Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and this shloka is a prayer to God, a Satoma Sadgamaya, to lead us from untruth to truth, from darkness to light, and from death to immortality. This is a prayer for the well-being of all. October 2018 up to now, I have given Gandhi Katha and Kasturba Katha in 138 countries in all the continents. Last year, from 22nd to 26th May, I had come to Seoul. SVCC and the Embassy of India had organized 2 talks here at Yonsei University in Seoul and Pyeongchang National University in Busan, which were very well received. I have found Mahatma Gandhi's influence profound wherever people are struggling for deliverance from injustice and oppression. In South Korea, Ham Seok-hyun was a notable figure in the religious society of Friends, the Quakers movement in Korea, and was nicknamed as the Gandhi of Korea. He was an important Asian voice for human rights and nonviolence during the 20th century, despite numerous imprisonments for his convictions. He was a Quaker who concluded that all religions are on common ground in terms of human beings, a view shared by many Quakers and, of course, by Mahatma Gandhi and Kasturba Gandhi too. On October 2nd, the world celebrated the UN International Day of Nonviolence. And in India, we celebrated Mahatma Gandhi's birth anniversary as Gandhi Jayanti. The entire world is remembering Mahatma Gandhi, the apostle of peace and nonviolence. We have an opportunity to remind the humanity of the efficacy of the messages of Mahatma Gandhi, the father of our nation. Likewise, through my Kasturba Katha, we have a chance to tell about the sacrifice made by this great lady in making Mohan the Mahatma. I pay my respects to the leading lights of Korea, people of South Korea, and the Indian community, and all those who have joined me online today. While the world celebrated the 150th birth anniversary of Gandhi, as I said before, this is also the 150th birth anniversary of Kasturba Gandhi. In all the countries, people have great reverence and respect for both of them. Many have been inspired by them to take up the cudgels against injustice through nonviolence. Others have followed their environmental credo, and still others have been deeply touched by their simple spiritual life. The new generation is eager to understand more about this greatest couple of the last century, who made such a huge impact on humanity and inspired many world leaders. Millions of people have been inspired by both of them in the past and in the present. Kasturba Gandhi's personality had a vastness of its own. Kasturba was a fighter, both in life and in politics, along with her husband Mahatma Gandhi. Kasturba had a mode of life. Her mode of life drew from the Indian traditions and combined with them the revolutionary thinking of her husband Mahatma Gandhi. During her entire life, She supported and played a great role and made him realize the larger interest of the humankind. Though Kasturba was a true Hindu wife, mostly who lived under the shadow of Gandhiji, she had an independent mind and personality of her own, which she had displayed from the days of a very early age when she was married to Mohandas Gandhi. Yet she tried to merge her personality with Gandhiji and stood by him in all his struggles. But she retained her independence both in terms of thinking and action. On critical moments, she engaged in daring acts on her own. Thus, she became a source of inspiration to thousands of men and women who put everything at stake in the fight for India's independence. In her speech in 1922 in the political conference, she had said, "It seems to me that the thoughts and experiences of Gandhiji are relevant today, and his path is always beneficial and peaceful. Gandhiji's message is the eternal message of religion. I believe that mutual cooperation among the people is self-rule or Swaraj. If Swaraj means the happiness and peace of 30 crore Indians, that can be attained only by peace. One can never get peace by using the means of disturbance. When our mutual cooperation falls apart, we are forced to bow our heads before the rule of others. One can never get peace by any other means." Kasturba Gandhi also talked about maintaining interfaith harmony and unity between the different faith communities. Kasturba's upbringing and values were passed on by a strong religious family in which she was born, which included going to the temple daily, worship of the sacred tulsi or basil plant, prayers, strict vegetarianism, intertwined with equality of all the religions, the dignity of labor, and the control of the palate. It did not involve a rebellion against men. It combined renunciation, penance, and non-attachment with self-dependence, dignity, and sacrifice. And thus her life remains an inspiration for all of us. Kastur was her name. She was the daughter of Gokul Das Makanji Kapriya and Vraj Kuwar, who was born, it is said, that on 11th of April 1869 in Porbandar, in the same year as Mohandas Gandhi, son of Karamchand Gandhi, and Putlibai was born. Karamchand Gandhi served as the Prime Minister of Porbandar and was an influential man. But so was Kastur's father. She was raised as the only daughter and the middle child of wealthy parents. Her father was a leading citizen and one-time mayor of Porbandar town in British India. At the age of 7, she was betrothed to her neighbor Mohandas Gandhi. As they grew up, Mohan started attending school, but Kastur stayed at home, as per the customs prevalent in India almost a century ago. Her schooling began by listening to the mythological stories and the great sacrifices made by great women of India, like Savitri, Taramati, Anusuya, and so on. She was taught to cook and take care of everyone. She loved singing devotional songs and was taught in the art of being a good wife, mother, and housekeeper from early on. The parents decided to knit the two families closer together by marrying their children Kastur and Mohandas at the age of 13 with great pomp and ceremonies. After marriage, Kastur came to be known as Kasturbai and spent the early married life in her father-in-law's home in Rajkot. Kasturbai was a spirited girl, had a very good common sense, and was an excellent judge of people. She was courageous, hardworking, simple, God-fearing, independent, persevering, and reticent. But Immediately after marriage, she resisted when her husband or her playmate or a friend restricted her moments to meet her friends and go anywhere she wanted to without his permission. Kasturbai was a very independent girl. She had many friends and insisted on going out whenever she wanted to visit her friends or go to the temple with her mother in law. When she was spoken to like this, she kept quiet and left. She was never rude, discourteous, or never answered back. But probably she never ever listened to her husband's commands of not going anywhere without his permission. Later on, Mahatma Gandhi wrote in his autobiography, My Experiments with Truth, that on that day, my wife became my guru, and I learned the first lesson of nonviolence from my wife through truth force and breaking the law courteously, or in Hindi, it is called Savinay Avagya, which he later on used in all his nonviolent civil disobedience movements. Kasturba had unlimited courage and tenacity. For years and months, she had to live away from Mohandas Gandhi while he was studying for law in England. And later on, with two children, she stayed back in India for a long period when he traveled for work to South Africa. As she could not read or write, so the exchange of messages or letters would have been a problem. So there was hardly any direct communication. Later on, as they grew up, as a wife, Kasturba's sacrifice is commendable. She had opened her house to the nation and the freedom struggle and supported her husband in his efforts. It would have never been easy on her. She fasted when Mahatma Gandhi was in prison, gave up things she liked, good food, her religious beliefs, and even her jewelry. Though she was a dedicated wife, she was far from submissive. She could hold her own and did make herself heard, even if it was her husband Mahatma Gandhi at the receiving end. She was not only a loyal wife, but also an extremely loving mother and grandmother. Now I will play Agan Kasturba Katha Dhun or hymn Man Vani Karma Se Satya Hi Tu Bol. That is the definition of truth that she gave of utter as you think and act as you utter.
Shobhana ji, you are muted.
Kasturba's life gives a glimpse of how a strong woman can empower herself, staying within the folds of tradition and conventions. At every stage, Mahatma Gandhi was transforming himself. So she supported him and was a silent partner in all his struggle. She taught Gandhiji non-violence through her conduct. She won over her husband at the end of the bitterest dispute with her plain, frank speech, her pleasant nature and firmness. After the initial apprehensions, she always took up the cause started by her husband and started advocating about it through her conduct and communications. She was an activist and an organizer who time and again mobilized resources and people, such as in South Africa in 1913, when she led a women's march against racial laws and was imprisoned there. She was the first Indian woman non-violent fighter, or satyagrahi, who voluntarily faced a jail sentence in foreign soil in South Africa in a fight for the basic rights of Indian women in South Africa. She also did not compromise with her vegetarian habits even in jail. So after months of imprisonment and suffering in 1913, she made a crucial contribution to the success of the Satyagraha in South Africa, but it is very little known to people. Kasturba had helped her fellow women in jail, saying, "Find the will and courage to survive the harsh prison routine." She motivated them all the time to finish the heavy laundry work and endless sewing tasks assigned daily. She made monumental personal sacrifices, not simply because her husband had wanted her to, but because she was convinced it was the right way. Her love for her husband never remained on low ebb. She was a firm believer that her husband's quest was for truth through nonviolence and purity of means to establish justice and dignity. Today is the World Cotton Day, and I want to narrate a story about the handspun cloth or khadi, a cause for which she was very, very firmly committed. So this incident is about Kasturba's forthright views and interaction with the then Viceroy Lord Wellington's wife, Lady Wellington, the Viceroy, in their summer resort in Shimla in 1930. Kasturba Gandhi had accompanied Mahatma Gandhi and was invited by Lady Wellington for a meeting as an honored guest of the Viceroy. She said to Kasturba, "Could you give me handspun cloth khadi that Mr. Gandhi propagates to make this country self-reliant?" Kasturba said, "I'll be very happy to do so." Lady Wellington said, "I will like to use it to connect to the people of India. Could you send me some purple khadi?" Kasturba Gandhi said, "Certainly, I will send you a lot of purple khadi. But I have a question. How will you come closer to the people of India through handspun khadi? Although I like your idea of developing a closer connection to Indian people by sampling our homespun materials, but you can also understand them better if you descend from the mountains to the plains where people live in large numbers. Then only you will be able to get to know them better." The Viceroy and the people around them were silent with such frank views coming from Kasturba Gandhi. On an earlier occasion also, during her speech in November 1931, she told people that our sisters are getting employment from khadi work. Therefore, all women should wear khadi, right from the queen to schoolgirls. Everyone should wear khadi. All her life, Kasturba Gandhi promoted cotton yard or khadi as the means of self-reliance and self-rule for the millions of Indians. She traveled all across India and propagated the need for the hand-spun cloth khadi to participate and achieve independence. She also said that when true and real power will be in the hands of people, many of our entanglements will disappear on their own. If we are strong, then the people around us also will become powerful by themselves. In 1907, and on an earlier occasion, while Mahatma Gandhi was leading the indigo farmers' civil disobedience movement, also known as the Champaran Satyagraha, Kasturba Gandhi worked as a volunteer by working towards the social and economic amelioration of the villages in Bihar. While they established primary schools in 6 villages in the district, Kasturba taught the inhabitants of the region rules on personal cleanliness and community sanitation. She took on a district-wide campaign which required massive re-education in health, hygiene, cleanliness, and sanitation. She began organizing groups of women and children to clean the whole village and taught them how to make brooms, which were first used to sweep homes and then the village's courtyards and lanes. So I'll also tell a story about what happened during the campaign. Mahatma Gandhi and Kasturba Gandhi had visited a small village and they found some of the women folk dressed very dirtily. Kasturba was deputed to inquire of the women why they did not wash their clothes. The woman told her that this cloth she wore was the only one in her possession. Tell Mahatma ji to get me another sari, she said, and I shall then promise to bathe and put on clean clothes every day. During the next few days, at noon, Kasturba collected the women and the young children and led them to the river to bathe, and turned the process of bathing and washing clothes into a game, enabling the women and children to clean themselves and their garments in batches, with the clothes drying very soon in the warm day sun. They were all clean, tidy, with skin glowing and hair glistening in the sun, and were laughing and chattering, looking so very happy. Thus, Kasturba, in her own ways, taught the importance of cleanliness and sanitation to the rural masses. Many times, Kasturba Gandhi represented Mahatma Gandhi in the conferences and the non-cooperation movement, since Mahatma Gandhi was imprisoned or traveling most of the time. It was Kasturba who toured with women to spread the awareness, and in between she also dashed off to the ashrams, to especially that time Sabarmati ashram, to see if all were well there. During the Salt March in 1930, Kasturba Gandhi sent off the marchers, telling women who were feeling sad, "We are warriors' wives. We must give the men courage. If we are brave, they will be brave. So we should be very strong from inside and outside also." Later, as the Salt March progressed, Kasturba Gandhi looked like a soldier engaged in the non-violent fight, went from town to town and village to village by bullock cart, visiting workers and meeting women and mobilizing them to participate in the non-violent campaign by picketing liquor shops, taking up spinning, wearing only khadi to become self-reliant. She did not understand much of politics, but her faith in her husband and the cause he was fighting was implicit in her courageous actions. This was the time of Salt Satyagraha, when her husband Mahatma Gandhi and 3 sons were in jail. Her bond with the women of South Africa, where she had spent almost 20 years, was reflected when the women in South Africa had sent money in the name of Kasturba after learning the success of the women's empowerment movement in India. Kasturba Gandhi wrote a letter to thank all those women who had been part of the non-violent campaign in South Africa along with her, and advised them to refrain from using foreign goods. She said, "Your behavior and lifestyle will always reflect Indian traditions and culture." Whenever she got a chance, Kasturba Gandhi was always seen to propagate or keeping up the Indian tradition and culture alive. She was the true non-violent fighter who always confronted her destiny dauntlessly, never more so than on 9th August 1942, when she went to address a meeting in Bombay during the Quit India movement, which was supposed to have been given by Mahatma Gandhi, but he was arrested in the morning. In her message to the women on this occasion, she said, "Mahatma ji has poured out his heart before you for 2 hours in the All India Congress Committee meeting held last night. What can I add to that? All that remains to us is to live up to his instructions. The women of India have to prove their mettle. They should all join in this struggle, irrespective of caste or creed. Truth and non-violence must be our watchwords. Kasturba Gandhi is known for her punctuality, discipline, promptness, and her wonderful hospitality, which everyone enjoyed. She maintained the accounts of the ashrams very accurately. Her fighting spirit never diminished, and she fought for the country and her family. She was extremely self-disciplined and soon became everyone's mother or ba, and that is why it is her name ends with Kasturba. Even in a life-threatening situation, Kasturba had amazing strength to work with women and inspire them. She showed empathy and displayed great capability. Not only was she conscientious, but also stayed steadfast and committed even in the face of unprecedented problems. Mahatma Gandhi has written about his wife in his autobiography, and I quote, "I consider her life to be pure. She has sacrificed a great deal, thinking it to be her duty as a wife. She has not stood in the way of my renunciation." He himself admitted that they may have not been an ideal couple or that they may not have been completely able to identification of ideals between them. But she had great valor, both physical and moral, as can be seen from the grave illnesses she suffered and overcame, and the hardships she faced during her imprisonment. In fact, she was a source of strength to her fellow women prisoners. Thus wrote Mahatma Gandhi. She was a very simple woman, a very gentle person. And in her gentleness, one can see the strength that came through. Over the years, she kept pace with her husband and the different roles he was performing. She supported him in his quest for social, economic, and political equality in India, and before that in South Africa. Mahatma Gandhi had undertaken 17 fasts for social cause, some of which lasted up to 21 days, often putting his life in danger. During such grave situations also, Kasturba Gandhi took hold of people around him and stayed calm and balanced as always. She expressed no anxiety or sorrow and immediately assumed responsibility of his daily routine. And I will now present a Kasturba Katha dhun or hymn, which is Lagire Lagan. Lagire Lagan. It is about the lifelong quest for Mahatma Gandhi for truth, non-violence, and purity of means that combine together in the form of satyagraha. Kasturba's philosophy of life was embedded on faith, and a firm resolve transformed it into conviction. The virtues of a Hindu woman and love for her husband prompted Kasturba to move to Phoenix settlement from Durban, a very comfortable life in Durban, to a life of community living, voluntary poverty, self-control, bread labor, and made the Phoenix settlement or ashram as a home in 1906. Those values and love for her husband gradually became integral to life in Phoenix settlement, ultimately resulting in faith. She was courageous and frank with a very clear common sense and dedication towards her duties. Her upbringing had prepared her for a life of service to the family, to the elders, her husband, and children. So, in all the ashrams that Gandhiji subsequently set up, she took charge and became the mother of everyone. She was not a follower of Gandhiji. She was a companion who observed the same duties. She has earned her place in history because of her sacrifice and strength of conviction, not only because she was the wife of Mahatma Gandhi, but it was also mainly for her fight for basic human rights for Indians in South Africa and in the Indian freedom movement. If Mahatma Gandhi broke stereotypes and was a crusader, Kasturba Gandhi broke the shell of superstitions and inhibitions to become a warrior. If Gandhiji was an inspiration to millions, Kasturba was an inspiration to him and a role model for countless struggles they faced together. If Gandhiji adopted the world as his family, it was Kasturba who managed the ashrams and cared for everyone's needs. Gandhiji in later years would say that he had learned the true meaning of satyagraha from his wife Kasturba. She made many personal sacrifices with her strong strength of commitment in what was right. She observed her wifely duties with complete dedication and composure. In all the dire situations, she rose up to the occasion and offered everything that she had. In the initial years, while her husband Mohandas Gandhi was away from home for studies and work for almost 11 years, she had already taken up responsibility of managing the households, bringing up her sons, serving elders, and later on in managing all the community members in the ashrams. So, I want to tell you that ashram life had a mingling of political and spiritual aims. It was a training ground for preparing ordinary people as greatest seekers and non-violent fighters or satyagrahis, as well as becoming lifelong workers engaged in constructive programs for nation building. Ashram life was a life of strict routine from 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. It was a life of voluntary self-control, poverty, observing the 11 vows, punctuality, discipline, promptness, leading a minimalistic living in harmony with nature, following the environmental credo of minimum use of resources, recycling, reusing, reducing, and refusing were the means. Growing and having simple vegetarian food through their own labor. Ashram life was a life of caring and sharing, being ever vigilant to the needs of others and managing the needs of the ashram with meager finances, participating in the daily morning and evening all religious prayers, daily practices of cleanliness, sanitation, and hygiene, spinning, agriculture, bread labor, and using every minute of time in the service of humanity. Kasturba was the guiding spirit of the ashrams that Gandhiji had established. There was no personal life for Kasturba Gandhi, just like her husband Mahatma Gandhi. And she dedicated her ashram life in the service of others. She accommodated everybody in her hut and maintained it in a very nice manner. Her doctor and younger associate, Dr. Sushila Nayyar, recollects her days with Kasturba in the ashram. She says, when I joined Sevagram ashram, I saw how she managed to keep her own belongings tidily and those of her little grandsons and several girls like myself in one small room without overcrowding. Her life was one replete with love, dedication, and also renunciation. Whatever she had, she always shared with others. Her husband Mahatma Gandhi had said that Ba has never complained even once. In the ashram prayers in the morning and evening, the first verse was recited from the Ishopanishad, the scripture, the shortest one in India. And that is Isha Avasyamidam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyan Jagat Tena Tyaktena Bhunjitha Ma Gridha Kasya Swidhanam. And that is the life of renounce and rejoice that Kasturba Gandhi followed by understanding that everything in this universe belongs to God. Nothing belongs to us. Enjoy the objects of the world in an attitude of perfect non-attachment. Enjoy it with a feeling of sacrifice to the extent that it is necessary, and leave the rest for others in the society. Never ever crave the possession of others. Nothing really belongs to us. So I will play the Kasturba Katha dhun now, which signifies the importance of renounce and rejoice. Naya tera, naya mera. Kasturba Gandhi's role and contribution during all the public health emergencies in South Africa and in India, treating and looking after the patients selflessly as frontline health workers along with her husband Mahatma Gandhi, is not very well known. She actively worked with him for eradication of plague and other deadly diseases in South Africa, and during the Spanish influenza pandemic of 1918 in India. During the pneumonic or bubonic plague outbreak in the Indian indentured labor or coolie location, where they lived in a very squalid and unhygienic condition in Johannesburg, both Mahatma Gandhi and Kasturba Gandhi rushed there for helping and isolating the patients. While Mahatma Gandhi was caring and treating the patients, Kasturba Gandhi visited every home in the location to talk to the women about basic health and hygiene and explain how to detect plague symptoms. In a broken English and Gujarati, she could communicate and mobilize women to collect sheets, blankets, and pillows for the patients. She collected a willing and healthy group of people and solicited their help to clean, scrub, and sanitize the empty warehouse, which was given to Gandhiji for relief operations by the Municipal Commission of Johannesburg for setting up and serving as a functional hospital. The couple spent many days caring and treating patients through nature cure selflessly and giving solace to the affected families to live without any fear or anxiety, but being very, very careful about contracting the deadly disease themselves. During the Spanish influenza pandemic of 1918, they opened up the Sabarmati ashram as a quarantine center and treated and served patients through nature cure, provided simple vegetarian diet to boost immunity and maintain physical distancing. Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi took care of the families of the patients, looked after their physical, mental, and spiritual needs, gave them correct information, and about remaining positive through prayers, meditation, and chanting of Ramanama, and taking care of each other during the time of this very deadly Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. Gandhiji had said on 10th November 1918, our ancestors could build such tough bodies in the past, but today we are reduced to a state of miserable weakness and are easily infected by noxious germs moving about in the air. There is only one and only one really effective way by which we can save ourselves from them even in our present broken state of health. That way is the way of self-restraint or sanyam, or of imposing a limit on our acts, wants, and needs. Today, the world is facing three kinds of crises globally. First is the COVID-19 pandemic. The second one is the serious and long-drawn financial crisis. And the third one is the ecological crisis, which is impacting everyone. We have to look for answers somewhere within ourselves while learning from the life of Mahatma Gandhi and Kasturba Gandhi. The lesson the pandemic is teaching us is simple. When one member of the family falls sick, the entire family is affected, and soon the community is affected. The nation is affected, and then the other communities in other nations in this globalized world. The well being of one individual has an impact on people on the other side of the globe. This is true of every action of ours. We will have to learn to live with COVID 19 now and in the future as well. Instead of reinventing a new lifestyle, we just have to get inspired from the life of Kasturba Gandhi and Mahatma Gandhi to make the necessary changes in thoughts and action and, of course, conduct for coping up physically, mentally, and spiritually. And this is the future that this pandemic is pointing out to us if we observe carefully. In August 1942, Gandhiji wrote the book Key to Health, in which he wrote that if anyone who observes the rules of health mentioned in this book will find that he has got in it a real key to unlock the gates leading him to health. He will not need to knock at the doors of doctors or vaidyas or the traditional health practitioners from day to day. I want to end with a small story. On 12th August 1942, while the nation was being led by Mahatma Gandhi for the Quit India movement, but he was arrested, and then subsequently after a speech, Kasturba Gandhi was also arrested. On 12th August 1942, a car stopped outside the imposing iron gates of Aga Khan Palace in Pune, where Mahatma Gandhi was imprisoned on 8th August. An old lady, very weak with sickness, and a young girl got out holding the pot of tulsi plant. They were Kasturba Gandhi and Dr. Sushila Nair. As they told the gatekeeper they wanted to meet the Mahatma, they had to walk a long way before they met him. And Bapu was surprised. He said, "Why have you come here? Have you taken any special permission to visit me?" Kasturba said, "No, we are also prisoners and were arrested in the evening of 8th August. And since we were kept in a different jail and I was not well, and the jail condition was also not good, so I had refused to eat and they have permitted me to come near you." She was clutching the tulsi plant, and the shloka that she recited every morning and evening was Mahaprasada Janani Sarva Saubhagyavardhini Adi Vyadi Jara Muktam Tulsi Tvam Namostute. As the world scrambles to find a cure for COVID-19 health as preventive health care measure, one can learn from Kasturba Gandhi that for boosting the body's immune system, tulsi leaves or basil leaves are helpful for minimizing the effects and hastening the recovery from the disease. Even the experts have suggested boosting the body's immune system may help minimize the effects and hasten the recovery. On 22nd February 1944, Kasturba Gandhi breathed her last on her husband's lap as a prisoner in the Aga Khan Palace jail in Pune in India. Gandhiji wrote that Kasturba was not behind him in any respect. If anything, she stood above me. But for her unfailing cooperation, I might have been in the abyss. She helped me to keep wide awake and true to my vows. She stood by me in all my political fights and never hesitated to take the plunge. In the current sense of the word, she was uneducated, but to my mind, she was a model of true education. She was a devoted Vaishnava, but she had left all feelings of caste from her mind and regarded a Harijan girl with no less affection than her own children. She personified the ideals of which Narsingh Mehta has sung in Vaishnavajan to him. There were occasions when I was engaged in a grim wrestle with death. During my Aga Khan Palace fast, I literally came out of the death's jaw, but she shed not a tear, never lost hope or courage, but prayed to God with all her soul. She was a woman always of very strong will, which in our early days I used to mistake for obstinacy. But that strong will enabled her to become quite unwittingly my teacher in the art and practice of nonviolent non-cooperation. And in his homage to Mother of Indian people issued by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, he said, and I quote, Srimati Kasturba was the ideal of Indian womanhood, strong, patient, silent, self-sufficient. Kasturba was a source of inspiration to the millions of India's daughters, among whom she moved and whom she met in the struggle for the freedom of her motherland. So, such is the story of Kasturba Gandhi, who was such an extraordinary person. And I am so grateful and very, very happy that the Embassy of India and the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center during the Sarang festival have hosted this Kasturba Katha, and I'm very grateful to them. I will end the Kasturba Katha with her blessings to realize our true potentials, to bring about change and serve selflessly. And the hymn that I'm going to play is her blessing, Shubha Mangal Ho. Mangal ho, Shubha Mangal ho, Shubha Mangal, Mangal, Mangal ho, Shubha Mangal ho, Shubha Mangal ho, Shubha Mangal, Mangal,
Thank you, Shobhana ji. Certainly, Kasturba Gandhi has been a source of inspiration for all of us. And many, many thanks for this fascinating exposition and keeping all of us so engrossed in this narration of Kasturba Katha. Narrating the Kasturba Katha, her sacrifices as a satyagrahi, beginning from South Africa to her experiences in Champaran in Bihar, and later during the non-cooperation movement. Very nicely you have weaved the entire story, and very precisely you have also focused on her role during pandemic in South Africa and later in India, and this has been a truly inspiring story and remains relevant even today during the time of COVID-19 pandemic. And thank you, Shobhana ji, for also highlighting the three important crises: the COVID pandemic crisis that we have in the present times, the financial crisis and the ecological crisis, and certainly the lessons that we can get from the life of Kasturba and Mahatma Gandhi to come out from these three very important crises that you have pointed out. These lessons are really incredible, and I'm sure our participants would certainly gain from these. Thank you once again, Shobhana ji, for your wonderful exposition. And it's been almost an hour. We can now wrap up the discussion, and we all can give a great round of applause to our most valued speaker, Dr. Shobhana Radhakrishna, and all the live participants for their participation today. Of course, also to the support provided by team of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center and Embassy of India, Seoul. And in the end, I would just like to say, stay tuned to our social media handles for more updates about our upcoming events. And do write to us to keep us updated about any new ideas and suggestions for deepening the cultural cooperation and people-to-people ties between the two countries of India and Republic of Korea. Thank you to all. Thank you. Kamsahamnida. Thank you, Shobhana ji. Thank you once again. And thank you to all the participants.